Welcome into this week's edition of the Recruiting Breakdown. My name is Gerry Hamilton, joined as always by CJ Vogel. A lot going on. Longhorns picked up Cade Phillips over the weekend. We thought there'd be some more decisions today, but obviously Hurricane Beryl has knocked those back a few days. Kelshawn Johnson moved back 2 days. Nick Townsend, Tanook Hines moved back a week. Today we're going to talk about all the decisions upcoming, maybe a look at what's left at a couple of the key positions on offense on the board. Before we get into that, I'm going to take a second for Mark Saunders, the sponsor of the Recruiting Breakdown. When it comes to protecting all your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? Here's some great news. Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders is the only insurance agent you'll need to help keep tabs on protection for all your stuff, all of it. Everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Do what so many other On Texas Football family members have done. Call Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders' office today at 512-218-8571. Are you in good hands? With over 35 years of experience, you will be in great hands with Texas alum Mark Saunders. Again, that's cell phone number 512-218-8571. All right, CJ, let's jump right into this. We're going to talk about two receivers first. Then we'll get to North Crowley's Jonathan Cunningham next. On Wednesday, Kelshawn Johnson will announce between A&M and Texas. That's been an A&M lean for a while. Steve Sarkisian's been in contact with the mom multiple times in Kelshawn here in the last few days. Is it enough to come back from? We'll see. I think A&M's been kind of steadily progressing there with Mike Elko and Holman Wiggins, putting the full court press on Kelshawn since that official visit date got locked in. Then there's Dalen McCutcheon, who will announce on the 13th. And I know you caught up with Dalen McCutcheon recently. That seems like it's been a Florida State lean for a while. Where are we at right now with that one? Because, again, Steve Sarkisian, and Chris Jackson attempting to turn up the heat on these two wide receivers.
Yeah, and I think they have to, right? You know, you probably were expecting a different decision to go your way with Corey Moore. Now you have to make do with what's left on the board right now, and the most pressing issues there are obviously Kelshawn Johnson and Dalen McCutcheon. I chatted a little bit with Dalen McCutcheon earlier Sunday evening, just kind of getting an idea of where he was with his decision. He said he's still locked in with his decision date. So just right around the corner. Of course, we believe that to be the 13th. He locked that in on Saturday. Some extra 4th of July fireworks coming, the remains, if you will. He said that he's been in contact, Gerry, with Steve Sarkisian and Chris Jackson. And that's very important for a number of reasons. But more importantly, Texas continues to push with Dalen McCutcheon. And this is something that, again, I put a note up on Texas Football at the beginning of the week is, hey, someone – had a conversation with me, Gerry, about the importance of Texas continuing to push for Dalen McCutcheon because they believed, at some point, whether it be right now in July or even later on in the season in, September, October, November, he would be a guy that they would potentially circle back on depending on how the dominoes would fall. And right now, a big domino has fallen, and it looks like he's certainly more of a priority than maybe where he was coming into his official visit in the middle of June. So that makes me interested, very much so, on what actual push the Longhorns have made right now, because I love Dalen McCutcheon. I think he's a tremendous wide receiving prospect. The issue there is the top end speed up there with some of the guys that Texas had up on its board higher. And to me, that's the question.
And that's what will be interesting to follow. So Kelshawn Johnson announces on the 10th, Dalen McCutcheon on the 13th. Then on the 15th, we'll get that Jonathan Cunningham in a second, but let's kind of keep winding our way through wide receiver. Then on the 15th, two more offensive targets come off the board. One of those is Nick Townsend, which we'll get to in a second. But let's hit on Tanook Hines, another receiver, a guy that you and I both love, feel like he's underrated. He's a 4-star with us all the way, not even close, has been. USC, his brother plays at Hawaii, little West Coast connection there. Notre Dame, which has been considered the favorite. Texas. Chris Jackson's been in contact multiple times here of late. And we're watching to see if A&M offers Tanook. He played in the 7-on-7 event up at College Station recently. Holman Wiggins has been, as Tanook Hines said, kind of chatting it up with him since that time. So Could an A&M offer come his way? Would it come his way if Kelshawn Johnson broke for Texas? We're not saying Kelshawn is. It's just interesting how everybody's kind of moving their pieces around the board right now. CJ, we think Kelshawn Johnson's A&M. We think Dalen McCutcheon's probably Florida State. Tanook Hines, more of a wild card. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Then I want to get to Nick Townsend. 6'3.5", 226, 10.92, physical, top 100 player on either side of the ball. We've said that a number of times. What we've also said is we believe Texas is still the favorite. A&M making that push, USC trying to make that push. Alabama on the peripheral, probably not going to be the choice. But I know you caught up with somebody kind of close to that recruitment as well as I have in recent days. That decision is 6 days away, but it's a big one for the Longhorns.
Yeah, it 100% is, right? You start looking at who else is on the board at the moment, and, well, Texas needs to start winning some of these, Gerry, and
Yes.
this is a big one for the Longhorns, especially when it comes to how this 2025 picture will start to shake out. Texas is up there, and I do think right now, whether or not it is Sarkisian or anybody else on this staff that is headlining it, Longhorns need to finish strong here, and that's 100% how I think most of these recruitments need to go. It has to be, if it's not Sarkisian, other folks on this staff need to step up and control their position group.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And look, Nick Townsend's a guy that we feel like is going to make a run to be a top 50 type of player in the country in this class. If that junior video ascends to what we think it will as a senior, in his junior video, I think he's been underrated the whole time. I think one service has him inside the top 100 in the country. He is a huge, huge target for Texas because if he were to pick the Longhorns,
yeah,
and you put him with Jordan Washington and Amari Winston and some of the other younger guys, but just Jordan Washington and Nick Townsend, you have two surefire studs at tight end that could be future high NFL draft picks. So that's a big recruitment coming up for Texas.
And Gerry, that was part of the reason when I went to go see him at Duquesne, what the conversation was about Texas. It was getting to a point developmentally where you are the downfield threat that you are currently in high school. It takes a little bit of an adjustment for tight ends to become that guy at the next level. The Texas staff pitched to him on the official visit. They obviously the Jatavian Sanders production and what he was able to do at Texas with all the records and kind of the hype that he set for himself down here at Texas. Well, they looked at Nick Townsend and they said, yeah, you're his size, but you have significantly higher of a ceiling in the speed category. And I think that's where his eyes kind of perked up and said, oh, okay, I could see myself in this offense putting up these numbers with these quarterbacks on campus at the moment. I could see myself potentially, kind of filling in with that Jatavian Sanders role down the road. It caught his attention, and I think it's the most, it's the pitch that he's kind of caught on to the most, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then A&M sitting there telling him, you team with Keody Armstrong, and we'll be the best tight end room in the country in College Station. So that's A&M's pitch as well. We feel like Texas is in a pretty good spot. So I'm going to go over what's left on the offensive line real quick. Then we're going to shift the defense. We're going to end with some wide receiver talk because I know Texas fans don't care about that at all. What's left on the offensive line right now is Michael Fasusi and Nick Brooks. Michael Fasusi, we believe, will have probably an August decision. I mean, he's got something to tell everybody Friday. We'll have more on that later in the week, though. But that's Oklahoma and Texas right now. Texas A&M third, Missouri fourth. And then Nick Brooks is not scheduled to decide until September right now. Could it be August? Possibly, but he could go into the fall kind of like Brandon Baker did. Texas feels really good about that. Georgia knows, I think they got some ground to make up. USC's straggling at the back of that line. That's still feeling like Texas or Georgia, but that battle's going to continue. Now, I will say this with Nick Brooks. The colleges will know soon where he's going, and I think you'll see that reflected in what some other schools do. But I think Texas is in a pretty good spot. They just got to hold off a hard-charging Georgia. All right, let's move over to linebacker, CJ. Jonathan Cunningham. I know you've spoken with somebody close to that recruitment. I've spoken with Jonathan Cunningham. The four-star on Texas football, four-star linebacker from North Crowley is scheduled to announce this Friday, July 12th. 6'2", 195, instinctive long arms, can really run, Fits what Johnny Nanson's looking for at linebacker. Texas, TCU, Utah are the final three. I think this is going to be an interesting decision because I think it may come down to one thing. Where does he think he can play earliest at versus where would he have to maybe take a developmental year? That would be Austin.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely being circulated in his camp at the moment, Gerry. And again, it's kind of been something that you've heard a few times, right?
Yeah.
In other linebacking recruitments, since Texas landed Leonga Lafau, Darian Gillette, Anthony Hill, some of these other in-state prospects have taken notice and said, hold on, it's going to take me a minute to see the field there. I think at some point it actually played into the decision for Ty Anthony Smith to end up at Texas A&M before the late flip, the coaching change, etc. So it's certainly, something that a lot of these linebacker recruits have had to pontificate about when it comes to where their best path to the field is. And of course, in the world of college football and the NIL money there, getting on the field is the number one way to increase what could be a nice payday in the world of college football. So it's interesting right now, but at the end of the day, it is Texas. It is in the SEC. And right now, the two other schools that are pursuing him are not. So I think that's something that evens the playing field for Texas a little bit here.
Yeah, I do too. And again, it's Texas, SEC, Utah, TCU, Big 12. I almost called Utah Pac-12, Big 12. And obviously Utah's the Big 12 favorite this year by most people. The other linebacker still on the board is a big one, not just because he's 6'3", 230, but because he's a big-time player. And that's Madden Faramo out of San Juan Capistrano. That's Notre Dame, Texas, going down to the wire. Notre Dame's had a big lead for a long time. USC also is going to stay in the fight there. But really, Notre Dame, Texas, with USC right there trying. Texas really opened his eyes. This kid would have been committed to Notre Dame 2 weeks ago had Texas knocked that official visit out of the park. So now once that happened, that's given the Faramo family and Madden a lot to think about here. So that will be interesting. Moving on from Faramo, DJ Sanders, Nathan Tillman, two names that Texas fans are still keeping tabs on. DJ Sanders, defensive lineman out of Belleville. That's Texas A&M or Michigan, probably Texas or Texas A&M. Then there's Nathan Tillman out of Mansfield Timberview. Interesting, CJ, decommits from SMU. Seemed like Texas was going to be the pick. Now it hasn't been the pick. Utah, TCU. We heard that before. Jonathan Cunningham. They're probably texting back and forth. There is a decision to be made there, and Nathan Tillman's not comfortable enough with it to go ahead and make it public, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think the thing with Tillman that I've kind of uncovered a little bit is, he told me originally whenever the Texas offer came and, he had some time to kind of sit back and think about what official visits he would take. He wasn't going to bump, TCU or Baylor or Utah for Texas. And he said, yeah, of course, it's the University of Texas. It catches my attention, right? Why would it not? I grew up in the state. That's the flagship program. But at the same time, they just offered me June 1st. All these other programs have been around since February or even before then. I'm going to give them their due diligence and the respect for the time that they've had recruited me long before Texas came around to give them that fair opportunity on a weekend official visit. And that's why you saw him come in for a midweek. So while at the time, you see all the writing on the wall of Texas offer comes in, recruitment opened back up, you get the officials scheduled, you haven't seen that other more important, kind of bookend to that timeline with a commitment. And I think that's him, again, evaluating where he would be best suited to get on the field early. Again, another conversation there. But at the same time, just, again, allowing those relationships previously at other stops to at least have another fair shot at landing his recruitment again. Because, again, it's a big decision. And he's got plenty of suitors right now inside the state of Texas and beyond that will want him in their class.
And he's already decommitted once. He wants this to be a final decision, finality, not have to go through this process again in November right before signing day. So Nathan Tillman, one interesting thing with Tillman's recruitment, Cade Phillips' parents were pro-Texas. Cade Phillips liked the idea of playing corner at LSU. He's kind of gone to Texas, bet on himself that, I might be able to play corner at Texas. If not, then they can move me to safety. Nathan Tillman, I think there's a similarity there. I think his parents like the idea of Texas. We'll see what Nathan ultimately decides. All right, CJ, before we close this one out, with wide receiver talk. It's time to take a second again for Mark Saunders. When it comes to protecting all your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one singular place that protects all of it? Here's some great news. Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders is the only insurance agent you'll need to help keep tabs on protection for all your stuff. Everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Call Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571. You will be in great hands with Mark Saunders' 35 years of experience. Do it a number of other On Texas Football family members have done. That's call Mark Saunders, 512-218-8571. All right, CJ, we're going to finish the show out today with wide receiver talk. I guess we have to. But look, Jamie French, Khalid Lockett are still out there. They're two of the very top targets on the board. We talked about Kelshawn. We talked about Dalen McCutcheon. We talked about Tanook Hines. So there's essentially 5 wide receivers right now. It's going to be interesting. Jamie French, August 30th. That date's not changing. That's his mom's birthday. Not changing. Khalid Lockett, August 7th, announcement date. That one's moved all over the map, CJ. I'm hearing a lot of A&M right now being more involved in that than we thought originally, or maybe some colleges thought originally.
Yeah, 100%. And again, it's one of those things where, you look at who else is contending for that recruitment, and A&M kind of sticks out, right? I mean, for a while, they've kind of been the school where wide receiver, talent hasn't blossomed, right? And so, of course, Texas had 3 guys drafted a year ago. Alabama's been a factory for big-time wide receivers. And Kalen DeBoer's new staff, you're expecting that to continue when it comes to, the Roma Dunzes, the Jalen McMillans, the Jalen Polks of the world. And then Florida State, they had a pair of receivers taken as well, Johnny Wilson being the big name there too. So A&M kind of on the developmental front saying, well, we're still sticking around. They're still making a lot of noise, which has been surprising to me. But to your point, probably a bigger threat than many expected at this point. And also where things sit at the moment, there's certainly no one to look over they're not someone to look over at the moment.
Yeah, I think A&M's been pretty smart about this recruiting class in this. Hey, Kelshawn. Hey, Khalid. Texas guys are DeCorian Moore and Jamie French. You're our number one guys. You've always been our number one guys. We've proven you're our number one guys. Who else has proven that? That is the recruiting. Bobby talks about how Oregon's out-recruited a little bit at times. A&M set back, I think, let Texas kind of make their path, and then they're coming back to 2 really, really good football players and saying, you're our guys. You've always been our guys. You're our top guys on the board. Who else can tell you that? That's a really strong recruiting pitch, CJ, at times where egos are involved.
Yeah. You likened recruiting to chess, and sometimes you get the Queen's Gambit. The other times you get the Bishop opening. And sometimes you sit back thinking, well, I wasn't prepared for this. When the Queen gets brought out early and you're not expecting it, there for you, well, then you lose your Queen, and all of a sudden you have to fight with what you got. Right now, Texas is kind of sitting back without a Queen in its corner, sitting, how do we counter? How do we get back to where we wanted to be? Because it's probably going a little bit different than I think Texas fans and even staff members would even like to, kind of admit at the moment.
Yeah, and then Jamie French, we still believe Texas is in a good spot for Jamie French. Miami, Tennessee, LSU, the competition, Ohio State on the peripheral there. Ahead of that August 30th decision. But again, to close out, Kelshawn Johnson, July 10th. Jonathan Cunningham, July 12th. Dalen McCutcheon, July 13th. Nick Townsend, Tanook Hines, July 15th. So 5 guys making decisions there coming up. And, the one that you say Texas has to win is Nick Townsend.
Mm-hmm.
The one you say they need to win, who would that be? Is there one?
I think I was actually going to
bring this. I didn't want you to put me on the spot, so I threw it at you.
I think it's tough to say, but I'd look at Dalen McCutcheon again, because, again, that wide receiving board, if it's not Kelshawn Johnson, who we're expecting to end up at Texas A&M, that's probably the 1-1.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think Dalen McCutcheon you have to make a play for, because, again, we just rattled off a number of wide receiver names, Gerry, and we said first choice at the moment. Not many of them, except for maybe Jamie French. included the Texas Longhorns right there. So that's actually where I was going to put, kind of put you on the spot there. So that Uno reverse card got me good, but it's Kelshawn and then Dalen to me. So they got to come back from behind victory for at least one of these 4 targets remaining on the board. I think Khalid Lockett, again, would be a guy that you absolutely take. But again, how far down the road is his relationship with Texas A&M, Florida State, and Alabama at the moment, who have all kind of been pitching being that number 1 guy in the fold, whereas, again, to your point, Texas might not have.
And we're going to close out with one thing. A congrats to Vic Schaefer and his staff, Texas women's basketball. They picked up on Monday afternoon the number 4 ranked prospect in America in the 25 class, a guard, Aaliyah Crump out of Minneapolis area, 6'1" guard, 5-star, no brainer, 5-star, one of the top 5-10 prospects in the country. And all the dust settles, she's ranked 4 right now. But one of the top 3 ranked guards in the country, commits to the Texas Longhorns over Ohio State and Duke. Obviously, another Aaliyah Chavez out of Lubbock, Monterey, I believe it's Monterey, is the number 1 girls prospect in America in 2025 class. That is Texas, LSU, or Texas Tech. We'll see which way it goes. But Vic Schaefer, congrats to Vic and the staff on picking up one of the top handful of basketball prospects in the country in the 25 class today. All right, for CJ Vogel, I'm Gerry Hamilton. That's been this week's Recruiting Breakdown. We'll talk to you tomorrow.